Good morning. This is a meeting of the Eastham Affordable Housing Trust on Thursday, June 12th, 2025. Calling the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. This meeting will be available on the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. It is being recorded. It is a hybrid meeting, so people can.
Good morning.
On Zoom, via the agenda on the town website. Good.
Sorry.
Okay,
I'm louder than most, it's sorry. No worries.
we don't mind.
I know you're here.
Glad you're here.
You might regret inviting me.
Never. Okay. Well, you get settled. We're gonna take care of a few other, business items. The declaration of the trust. Want to talk about that?
Yes, so, basically, we had the amendment, notary, everybody signed it with the notary, and when we went to file it, we found out that the original actually was never filed. So we have to revise it again. We had to revise the date as a May 2025 amendment.
Okay.
So that's why. And then after, looking at it a little bit more, there were a couple of changes that were never, implemented in the amendment. So I had summarized them on the sheet here. And they do need to be, voted on. So, the changes would be to the title, of the document from Declaration of Trust.
Do you have a packet for Amy?
It's right on the corner there.
That's cool. That's for you. The
Just
second
trying to
page,
find it on my phone.
the second page.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
It's, yes, the second page. So we're changing the title from Declaration of Trust, Town of Eastham to Affordable Housing Trust
Okay.
to Declaration of Trust, Eastham Affordable Housing Trust, amended May 2025. And then the first paragraph of the document, which is behind the summary I have here. Legal counsel had advised to change all of the names, to remove the names of all the trustees and just call them by the trustees.
That's smart, there's no change.
Exactly, yeah. So, and then, there was one more statement, number 3 was to remove, changes from Article 5th. Which, to the purpose of the trust shall be to provide for the creation and preservation of affordable housing in town for funds provided under GLC or 44B to acquire, create, preserve, rehabilitate, and support community housing as defined in 44B and as it goes in the document. So
I'll
those
make a
were,
motion to.
Yes.
Yes, add those changes or make those changes. Accept the changes. Thank you.
And to, have the current trustees re-sign the declaration. Okay. Is there a second?
A second?
Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Elaine, yes, all
Yes.
right, passes 4-0. And Rachel told me that Jackie's assistant,
yes, so, Lori Gillespie Lee, she'll be in Jackie's office temporarily. Jackie's new assistant will be starting, I think the 16th of June. But Lori will be here part-time, so we can arrange for her to notarize the document rather than you guys having to go to the bank,
and,
as she's a notary. So,
and would all have to be
She
there.
has- Will she have
Yeah.
the document there then in the office?
she
Yes.
will after I talk to her, absolutely.
Great, okay.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and can we go in one by one? We don't.
I'll find out.
Okay.
I'll find
Oh,
out.
that, let us know.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so we've taken care of that. So Hillary, are you,
I'm almost ready because I don't know how to get the presentation onto that computer. I am going to email it to Jackie Tupper. Is that okay with you? And then you can pull it up.
okay? While you do that, how about if we do the discussion to increase the rental assistance program?
Fine, can I just get some total clarity? I think as far as signatures, what I'm gonna do right now is wait to hear.
Yes,
Perfect,
yes.
I can do that.
Rachel's
Yes.
going to email us and let us know when
Yeah.
and
Sure.
where, and whether we can do it individually or whether we have to.
Do it as a
Yeah.
group and with when she's gonna be here.
Yes.
No problem.
Rental assistance program,
Yes, I spoke to Maggie Flanagan, and their recommendation would be to increase it to 500 a month. If we wanted to increase the stipend,
From 350?
350 to 500. Other towns are doing a range between $500 and $600, and so
and we have sufficient
funds
funds.
in order to do that.
Set aside to do that.
Yeah.
We talked about it in our meeting last week, when Maggie was here,
Yes.
and, so do you think 500 or 600?
Well, she recommends, she thought 5 would be sufficient, but it's certainly up to you guys if you want to leave the discretion up to them based on, the individual.
Right, I'll make a motion that we increase the rental assistance amount from 350 to 500.
Okay,
I second that.
all right, all in favor?
I,
Aye, okay, pass 4-0. We had discussed that last week, so, or last month.
Right.
Okay.
2 months ago,
Was
Yeah,
it?
2 months ago. 'cause
we didn't have a, main
We
meeting.
didn't have-
it was 2 months ago, yeah.
Big wave in the memory banks.
I know.
Well, you were saying last week, and I was like, what, 5 minutes? Huh?
I was going with
It's
it.
okay.
Yeah, it was between Carol and Rachel last week.
Yeah, that's okay. Then, let's see,
Minutes?
no, I did not, I forgot to email them out, I apologize, I wrote them. But I didn't email them, so we'll do those next month. There was something as a follow-up thing that. Let me double check. Oh. One of the things on the minutes from last month was, or last meeting, was, talking about doing the PSA at Lower Cape TV. I don't know, Rachel, whether you and Elaine have had a chance to get together.
We've not.
I'll be back on Sunday, so we can certainly talk about that next week.
Yeah.
Okay, that'll be good. Okay.
Was in touch with somebody from from Housing Protection though, or Homeless Protection, about doing a PSA. That
Great.
they were gonna come in and do something, so,
Okay.
that
Yes,
hasn't
that
been
was-
scheduled yet, but the conversation started.
And the concept there was simply to basically advertise these programs that are available, make sure
Yeah,
people know they
just,
exist.
yeah,
Yes.
to do a PSA that would just describe the program and just give people some information about who to contact to find out more.
Exactly. So, good. Jackie, are you ready?
Yeah, let me share.
Okay. So we're pleased to have Lily here to do a presentation about wastewater and particularly talk about how that intersects with affordable housing. It's of interest to us.
So do you want us to give our standard presentation, or do you want us to maybe talk specifically about growth neutral bylaw? Do you wanna?
I would like to hear more about that, yeah. because
Okay.
People, these signs now saying overdevelopment, and I'm like, no, that's
Yeah.
not gonna happen.
Okay,
I mean,
So-
I think, let me
Yeah.
just double check. Elaine and Justin, I know Amy's heard it a number of times and I have. Have you heard the standard presentation?
No, I mean, I'm aware of what, I'm aware of the thing, but I haven't actually been able to attend any of the
Okay,
meetings.
Yes, and I have, but I'm happy to hear it in more detail.
I'm also a fast learner, so don't feel like you have to go through a whole entire thing
You
just
just
for
go
me.
through just-
okay, so why don't we do sort of the background history first,
Sure.
and we can talk about the whys, and then we can get right into the site plan, the layout. And then at the end, we can come back and have a larger discussion on
Right,
growth neutral,
Right.
what this means for development.
and you've got about 40 minutes.
Okay, it's okay, cause I'm on a tight time schedule anyway, cause Kayla needs me to make a video, so. Rest assured, we are gonna move
I'm wearing
quickly.
my fish. I'm doing my own, we're all doing.
Okay, yeah, we all have to be alone. Okay, so let's move to the timeline. Okay, so this is our project team. Everyone on the left was town staff. On the right, we have two consultants working with us. We have GHD and we have Apex Engineering. GHD is working on the treatment plant. Apex is our OPM and they're working on the collection system. This slide is meant to just show the number of years, the number of town meeting votes that have dealt with wastewater or drinking water. We have a long history in this town of trying to do the right thing. Sometimes it takes a little while, but read the slide if you want, but we're moving in the right direction. Next slide.
And this presentation is on the town website.
Yeah, there's,
So Justin, if you or Elaine want to go back and read the details of any of the slides.
I think I've even downloaded it.
okay, and I would suggest listening to Rich's piece. He's not here today and he does play a major part in the discussion about the finances,
Yeah.
which is something Jackie and I don't do as well. So I'm gonna just sort of leave that out unless you have a specific question. I'm happy to field it. So, okay, let's talk about the history and how we got here. In 2009, Eastham actually began working on wastewater and drinking water. We had hired Stearns and Wheeler as our consultant, and they recommended at that time that we move forward with a water system before a wastewater system, but that the wastewater system come closely behind. So 2009, they recommended the public water system, and we've been working on that ever since. From 2009 to 2012, the Cape Cod Commission was designated to identify nitrogen sensitive areas. These colored areas are our nitrogen sensitive areas. They were ordered to establish nitrogen reduction goals and find plans to implement changes. This resulted in the 208 plan that you probably have heard a lot about over time. All of the towns have to be in compliance with this 208 plan. There was litigation from CLF against DEP and a couple of towns along the way. So the Cape Cod Commission serves as the 208 plan manager, and it's their job to ensure water quality and this plan for years to come. In 2011, Eastham enacted the Eastham Ponds Action Plan. We got together, worked with some consultants and came up with an action plan for ponds, because ponds are just as important to our water quality and our resources in town. 2012 to 2016, we began to identify strategies to reduce nutrients in our ponds and estuaries. Design and construction of the water system began, and our wastewater efforts focused on Boat Meadow, Herring River, Wellfleet Harbor, Rock Harbor, Nauset Harbor, Salt Pond, and Town Cove. 2012 and 2013, we conducted some alum treatments in Herring and Great Pond. We recently had a pond workshop for those that are interested in ponds. It's on the website. We had our pond consultants there talking about how the ponds are faring following that treatment. So that's pretty interesting if folks are interested.
How are they doing?
They're doing okay.
Good.
They're holding stable. Some are degrading and some are staying the same, and a few have increased a little bit.
You talked about the nitrogen sensitive areas being what's in color. Am I to understand that what's in white is not designated as a nitrogen sensitive area?
Okay, so that's tricky. So this is the Nauset estuarine system. So
Okay,
this is just
I
Nauset.
thought you might say something like that, so
Yeah.
go on.
I have another map that's not a part of this presentation, unfortunately, that we got later from the GIS analyst at the commission that actually shows the nitrogen sensitive areas and then the direct discharges to the bay and the Atlantic.
Okay.
I think that's what you might want to see. So I can.
Yeah,
show
well,
you
I was just
that.
curious, because then you were listing off work in what, 2010,
Yes.
2012,
Yep.
there was Boat Meadow and Rock Harbor and all
Yep.
that stuff in the white area of that
Yes.
map, and I was
Yeah.
just trying to connect the dots.
Correct, you're right. So in 2017 to 2022, we began a planning process that built upon all of the prior work that was done. We finished up with the Massachusetts Estuaries Project, and we began to develop the Targeted Watershed Management Plan, which outlined our specific strategies to move forward to remediate the Nauset estuarine system. Also, in 2018, we began treatment for Phragmites in Schoolhouse Minster Pond. 2019, we hydro-raked those ponds. And in 2020, we put in the aerator. We have an educational signboard. We gave some tours down there, so we worked pretty diligently on that pond to bring it into better compliance. 2020, we also installed a permeable reactive barrier along Salt Pond as a trial project to see how that would work. That's actually functioning great. It's removing nitrogen. We are slowly looking at increasing the length of that barrier to gain more treatment. We don't have a funding source, and I thought it would be highly unpalatable to add any more money to our current ask, so we're looking for grant money to continue that. We have a little bit of design money there. 2023, town meeting approved money to design the collection and treatment system. That's where we are at now. 2024, we received a certificate from the Secretary of Environmental Affairs approving our targeted watershed management plan, which is an important step. It went through the Mass Environmental Policy Act, which is the regulatory body that oversees all of this for state permitting. Same time, DEP changed their Title V regulations, which I think you might be curious about, just based on your question. They enacted regulation that said anyone in an NSA will have to upgrade to an IA system within 5 years' time. So we have nitrogen sensitive areas. We filed a letter of intent saying our intention is to file a watershed permit. We want to follow this plan, which is the approved targeted watershed management plan. And that would be our work plan for the next 20 to 30 years going forward.
And this is the idea that if the town makes those promises and then starts making good on those promises, then the individuals aren't required for the IA systems.
Correct.
And the NSAs.
In the
Picking up
NSA,
these
correct,
acronyms quickly.
unless and of course, you fall into one of the special categories that the Board of Health already regulates and
Okay, sure.
requires the upgrade to the IA system.
That makes
We can
sense.
talk about that.
So
Like if your house is floating in the middle of the pond, I'm sorry that we're building a sewer system,
Yeah.
you still need to handle this, yeah.
So how, the difference in the maps, because what Justin's point, what you were talking about.
Yes.
How different are the maps?
How different are the maps? So this is the Nauset map. We have many maps. I think the map that you might want to see is the map from the commission, and I can pull that up once we're done, just so you can
Okay.
see what I'm talking about. So
Right.
we'll-
And I'm comfortable with the level of detail right now, what I want to understand and do understand is that no, this is not all of the nitrogen sensitive
Correct.
areas.
Right.
This is the Nauset estuary.
Correct.
And its nitrogen sensitive
Yes,
areas.
And that's the area we're focusing on first, because number one, it's the most degraded. Number two, we are entirely in control of it. We don't share it with any other communities.
Oh, right.
And it's the biggest nut to crack.
Right, okay.
So, let's see, we have ongoing, just to round it out here, we have some ongoing stormwater projects that we're also working on at a number of town landings and salt pond landings. So we have grant money from the USDA to work on some stormwater mitigation projects. That piece of property that the town agreed to take at town meeting, Delgeezy property, as I know it, I don't know the exact
Yes.
address.
Salt Pond
Yeah,
project.
you all know it
Right,
quite
so-
well. It will house some stormwater and a pump station going forward, so that's why that project was important to us. Okay, so that's the timeline. Next slide, please.
Okay.
Why do we want a wastewater management plan? This is what's important to me. We've got environmental concerns, obviously. We see shellfish closures, we see increases in red tide, we see beach closures, we see pollution surges during storm events. We know that low dissolved oxygen from all of these nutrients causes fish kills, it degrades the environment. We're seeing an increase in vegetation growth that we don't want. The increase in vegetation growth obviously decreases our recreational values of these resource areas also. We're seeing increase in algae. We just looked at some bacteria from our beach sampling, and some of the numbers on the ponds in this area are actually increasing. So something to keep our eyes on. And we really don't want to be issuing health advisories. It's just bad for the town. It's bad for tourism. It's bad for our residents. It's bad for everything. So regulatory compliance comes into play here also. So because we have the TMDLs, we are required to meet them in a certain amount of time. And there are requirements of the Clean Water Act where CLF will come in and sue us if we choose to do nothing and just sit idly by. The effects of nutrient loading, this is one of my favorite statements, and bacterial contamination span the spectrum here from environmental to socioeconomic impacts and have direct consequences to our culture, our health, our economy, and our tax base. Another just tidbit of information to throw in, a standard Title V can get the nitrogen down to 35 milligrams per liter. And a regular IA system that's on the market today for general use gets you down to 19 milligrams per liter. We have two types of enhanced IA systems available on the market today, a nitro and a nitrex. Those are coming in around 10 milligrams per liter, and our wastewater treatment plant will get us down to 3 milligrams per liter. We were in Orleans earlier in the week at their treatment plant, and their operator told us their numbers generally come out at 2.4 milligrams per liter. So that's pretty impressive.
That's 2.4 milligrams of nitrogen for every liter
For
of
every
water
liter
that
of
gets
water.
flushed out?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. Next slide, please. This is our roadmap, the targeted watershed management plan. You've heard us talk about it quite a bit. It's available online. It's hundreds of pages long with several appendices and technical memos all tied in. This is the plan that we brought forth to DEP to seek approval. It covers a number of different things. It outlines the collection and treatment plan that we're proposing. It covers stormwater approaches. It covers the permeable reactive barrier, aquaculture as an option, IA systems. And what I think is most important is probably collaboration for the future years to come. So we meet with Orleans regularly to talk about possibly sharing some type of system with them in the future. They're building number of phases as part of their wastewater treatment plan. Maybe down the line, they'll have some extra capacity to share with us so that phase 2 could go down south instead of coming back up north. So we also collaborate with Wellfleet because we share the Wellfleet Harbor watershed up north, and we don't yet have a plan on how we're going to deal with that area.
Would that include Maurice's campground?
So Maurice's campground is what I'm sort of putting some hope into, because they're gonna have to build a treatment plant just for Maurice's campground, because their plan is to build a small treatment plant in the center of town at their transfer station to serve downtown. Maurice's campground is really a long ways away from the center of Wellfleet.
Right.
So my guess is that they're gonna do a smaller scale treatment plant there, and if they do, they may have extra capacity also to pick up those properties in Wellfleet Harbor. But their plan as it stands is to utilize these enhanced IA systems, which get the nitrogen to 10 milligrams per liter. They believe that will solve their problem. We know here in Eastham, that doesn't solve our problem because we still can't get the nitrogen low enough to have a marked improvement in our estuary. So I'm gonna leave the growth neutral off to the side. Next slide, phase 1. This is our phase 1. This is the nuts and bolts. We are going to sewer the whole area that is colored. We've since changed the map to one color. We've had a lot of feedback on the different colors and what the different colors mean and why we have different colors, but that whole area will be part of the collection and treatment zone. Everyone in that area will be required to hook up at some point in time. We don't yet have regulations devised on what that looks like. We've gotten a lot of questions in about people that currently just installed an IA system in the past 5 years, or whether they have a cesspool, what that looks like. So we don't yet have a timing scheme of when the hookup will occur, but we know all of those people will hook up at some point in the near future.
In the dark green.
In the dark green, the light green, and the cream,
Oh,
all
all
of
three.
them.
Okay.
Then I don't have to, I've got a house right at the edge of the dark green, so I don't have to wonder if it's on either side of the dark green or light green.
Well,
They're
if you-
both getting it.
Yeah, and if you have a question about your property, there is an interactive lookup on the website. You pop in your
Oh, that's
address.
quite- I can see from that. That's
Okay,
quite clear.
okay.
Well, my only question was, am I in dark green or light green, but.
And it doesn't
if
matter.
It doesn't matter,
Yeah,
then
it
it
doesn't
doesn't
matter.
matter.
We're gonna get all of you. There's 786 properties in phase 1. That's what
That
we're
was kind of the
currently.
first place the town water went to, right? Roughly this.
Yes,
way?
around the transfer station because it was the most
There
impacted.
you go.
So we've got 786 properties in phase one. Phase two picks up another 856 properties. We expect it will take us 3 years to complete construction. And
Phase one and two?
no, just phase one. So we're building the treatment plant to accommodate phase two. We are not designing phase two collection because, like I said, we're hopeful that there'll be some other options by the time we're done phase one. So we'll have the capacity for phase two, and the infrastructure, but we might not need it up there. We can do something else.
That's probably basically just an extra SBR
It's
tank.
the extra tank that we're gonna use for the equalization at this time, but it would get
So it's
repurposed.
not like,
We're not
we-
building, yes, no,
I
we're
just want
not,
to be clear, because I've heard some people saying that, oh, why are we building this for something that we may not need?
yes.
And I'm like, it's really just an extra
It,
tank.
yeah, and when you see, I had asked Jackie Tupper yesterday to make us a new map, because I think there's confusion out there about like what this looks like and what the impacts are to certain neighborhoods, and I spent a lot of time at the transfer station, driving around the neighborhoods, like really trying to feel out and understand the impacts to people, because that's something I care deeply about also. And it's really interesting because when you actually see the plan and you drive around, the impact is so minimal. And I know it's been talked about a lot and a lot of people have a lot of thoughts on it. But when you look at this new site plan, our buildings are so miniature. Like in the scale of what we're looking at around us, our nearest neighbor is the McGregor property off of Holmes Road. I'm guessing no one's been out there except Alex and I, like just looking around and scoping it out, and, oh, you've been out there?
Yeah, because we have other purposes for wanting to look at that property.
Right.
So-
Okay, so it's not well maintained.
Right.
I have a couple of other choice words that I'm not gonna
Right.
use, but it's very messy. There's no residential development right there.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
Yet.
And it wouldn't be right up against the bike path anyway.
Right.
It'd be further.
And so you also have some pretty heavy land uses going on out there now. I don't know when the last time you were out there was.
Yeah, is dirt works back there.
I think Dirtworks is
That'll-
back there. I think Brundage is back there, maybe GFM. From the first time I went there to the last time I've been there, it looked entirely different. So it's, so it's active back there as, an industrial site should be. So I think that's the closest impact.
Yeah, when you drive around the neighborhood, you can't see like the metal pile now, and that's where the buildings will be.
right.
Yeah, so it's
Down,
really,
back.
it's really interesting. So we'll have that map available soon. And just while we're talking about impacts to the neighborhood, sorry, Jackie, I'm gonna skip to a slide we don't have just because it might be interesting. So you could pause there. What we're doing to reduce neighborhood impacts. So this was an important discussion that we had internally and with our consultants about what we could do, because we heard all these concerns. At this point, we hadn't logged a lot of time at the Orleans treatment plant, but we've spoken with them. And so we are going to maintain a vegetated buffer around the sites where we're doing construction and along Old Orchard Road, with some pretty thick vegetation, which isn't there now. Right now, the site is very visually unappealing. It's got a lot of invasives, it's got a lot of different piles, it's got junk, it's got all kinds of things going on because it's our DPW site and they collect and store things. So once we're done, the site, I think, is actually going to look a lot nicer than it looks today when you drive by. You'll still have the odors from the trash operation, but we are putting in a pretty advanced carbon filtration system to capture any odors that might be escaping into the environment. It's about a football field and a half back. The treatment is about a football field and a half back from Old Orchard Road, so abutting the Holmes Road side of the property. We've moved all of the buildings to the back, all of the operations to the back. We do know that we need sludge to be collected. We can control the time of day that occurs because we've heard concerns about noise of trucks early in the morning. We've got the buffer zone, we've got odor control, sound baffles, that's all state of the art. We saw some of that in Orleans.
You could smell nothing outside the Orleans plant, even right over the SPR tanks.
It's fascinating.
Inside, you know, you got like sewer gassy smell in one room, and then the other room where the septic, which we aren't even gonna have, had, you know, kind of a smell like when you get your septic tank pumped.
Yeah, and so Orleans is different
Outside.
also because they collect in sewage from residential homes. So people get their septic tanks pumped, that sewage gets trucked to Orleans and offloaded there. There is a smell associated with that activity, but we are not having that here in Eastham. Our site just won't accommodate that.
Where does our pumping go?
Right now, it probably goes to Orleans or it goes down to Yarmouth. Out of town.
And the plan is to have the trucks that come and get the sludge, it'll all be done indoors, like the semi will
goes in.
pull in,
Mhm.
get hooked up. And there's odor control in there of, you know, like crazy. And then another garage door opens on the other side and they drive out.
Okay.
Now, Orleans had, what, they say 6:30 or something that.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, when we want like 10 or something, you know, we can.
And we
don't
can
want
control
anything.
that,
We
so we
can
can
set
control that, because we know that the neighbors don't want any additional beeping or bright lights or
And
any.
so we probably have to pay more if, you know, it's not a time that's convenient for them
Yes.
to, but, you know, I think that's a must that we have to do.
So, why are we locating it at the DPW? Well, it is the best site for it. We did investigate the sand pit, we investigated Sandy Meadow, Tea Time, and the Cape Cod Children's Place. So we know that we can put some recharge at the Cape Cod Children's Place in the future if we need more capacity. That site is not conducive to a treatment plant because of the elevations and the grades of the lot. The same thing held true for Tea Time and the sand pit. And all of these sites have some complexities to them, so they all interact with our drinking water wells, which is important, and we'll get to that next. But on the other two, Tea Time had capacity issues, and the sand pit would have needed a lot of clearing of undisturbed areas, and it didn't make sense hydrogeologically. So the next slide shows us. And recharge is what happens after all of the treatment. Jackie's gonna talk about the treatment process, so you can understand that a little bit. How are we on time? Okay, okay. So the recharge is where it goes back into the ground in a sand bed. It looks kind of like a giant sandbox. They'll come and scrape it every once in a while to make sure it's functioning fine. And it won't be visible from the road or from either side of the property because of the elevations on our lot. So this slide shows the distance and the time it takes for the wastewater to travel in the groundwater and reach our drinking water wells. I'm not gonna go through it in such detail because I want Jackie to talk about the process for you. But what you can see is that the transfer station site is the most hydrogeologically feasible site because it, number one, only reaches one well. And number two, it takes a great amount of time to get there. And number three, as we talked about, the treatment level of the water is going to be so much better than what we're seeing traveling that distance now. Next slide, please. Jackie, that's you.
Okay, that's me. I'll go through these quickly. So this slide, we just wanted to show that the treatment building itself will be two separate buildings. The front building operations just means that's where the operator will have offices, conference rooms, things like that, next to where the filters will be, which is on the next slide. And then the back building is where most of the processes are going to occur. And behind that, we also have outside the building an odor control unit that Hillary had mentioned, the generator, the transformer, in case they lose power. And then these pictures are GHD is designing the plant, and they also design the plant in Mashpee. And that's what these pictures are. They also have two separate buildings kind of close to the same size. We have the dimensions here. And we decided to make it look like kind of match what they did in Mashpee. Just obviously don't want it to look like an industrial building. And I think Orleans, it was more the bluer color as well, and they kind of had stone on the bottom. But we just tried to make it look like Cape Cod character. Okay, so treatment steps, I guess I'll just start with the collection system. So Hillary had that whole phase 1 map. That's a little over 70,000 feet of piping. And right now we're looking at more of, we're still in design phase, but like a 70-30 split, meaning 70% of the pipe will most likely be gravity sewer. That means it just flows by gravity, and it's all dependent on the elevations. And then the other third, we're looking at low pressure sewer. Again, it's based on the topography of the whole area. The low pressure will need just to be able to pump it up if it's in a really low spot. And then some of the gravity properties, even though the pipe on the road will be gravity, if somebody's house is way below the road, they'll need to pump up their service into the road. So those houses and then the houses on low pressure have what's called a grinder pump on their property, which we have in our project budget to supply that. So then their service will go into the pump that pumps it into the main. Collection system, we're looking at 5 different locations for these small pump stations. They're underground with submersible pumps, and the only thing you'd see above ground is maybe a small like electrical panel that we can fence in. So right now we're looking at Elks to capture everything on Route 6, those town-owned duplexes across from Salt Pond, the elementary school, potentially Children's Place, and then the bottom portion of the parcel and the transfer station below the solar panels. And essentially you kind of divide it into the different areas between low pressure and gravity. It goes to all the pump stations, and then from the pump stations we'll have force mains connecting into different pump stations, and then ultimately we're going to have it discharge onto the pipe on Old Orchard, which then gets pumped into the treatment plant. And once
Jackie,
again,
faster.
faster. Oh, sorry, I don't know. Go back. Oh, I don't know if it's gonna let me go back. But I guess, yeah, to make it faster, pretty much the processes are just, it's like a manual. Once the waste gets into the treatment plant, we have manual bar screens to remove grit, rags. The main process is this SBR tank, which allows for the bacteria in the water, the wastewater. We'll add in air to let them eat up the organic matter. We'll add chemicals to settle all the sludge, and then the sludge gets moved off, and that other water just goes through a filter and UV disinfection. And then from there, so this just shows the buildings on the site. After the disinfection, it just goes to all of these orange, these are just sand beds. So literally it will just look like open areas with sand, and that gets discharged into the ground.
Quick question, Jackie, the buildings, where do the trucks come in to get the sludge loaded on?
I don't know if it's good.
Sorry.
I get back. Oh,
Sorry.
oh.
The presentation's in Canva, because Kayla pared it down for us, and we don't work with Canva often, so it's difficult to operate.
You said in Canada.
No, Canva.
So right now, based on GHD's plan, they were having them, I think, come in DPW, go behind the building here through the sand beds, and then park here. Pick up the sludge and then go out the transfer station.
Okay.
And so we have this scaled into an aerial map of the neighborhood, which is really quite fascinating to see. So we'll roll that out shortly here.
Good.
You good with process?
Justin?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay.
Okay, so growth neutral, we'll just flash back to that. So sewers, it's interesting because, you know, a sewer doesn't equal an increase in development, which I think is contrary to the signs you've seen around town. We know what our capacity is, so part of our planning was to allocate flows and loads to different parcels around town. And you really get one bite at this up front. And so we knew we had some properties that we wanted to have a little bit of development on. The development can't be beyond what is currently allowed today because we don't have capacity. We're trying to correct a problem and we don't have the infrastructure we don't have the land area to accommodate larger scale development than what's already in place. So really, zoning continues to sort of manage the size of growth that is allowed in town. So we have zoning controls in place, you're all familiar with them. Board of Health has controls in place that keep development down also, based on nitrogen loading again. So the Board of Health will say you need 10,000 square feet to have one bedroom. One bedroom equates to 110 gallons per day of flow. And then there are certain types of systems, some of these IA systems that get you additional nitrogen credit. So the plant that we are building, the recharge that we're building is not going to accommodate any additional large scale development that we didn't foresee coming. So we have a flow associated with tea time. We have a flow associated with, various undeveloped lots that is in line with what you see today or in surrounding areas.
The zoning, I'm on the zoning task force.
Perfect.
Yes,
So
and
you probably understand it better than me.
well, and that raises some questions, I
Mhm.
think. It would be interesting. The zoning task force and looking at the recent zoning changes does anticipate increases in residential development and commercial development in the central core of the town and along Holmes Road, Tea Time, and that whole area. So I just want to be sure those are consistent with what you've done,
Yeah,
kind of.
I just want to ask the question to Jackie. Jackie, can you see the flow that we assigned to, do you want to use tea time as an example or?
Time or Holmes Road, one or the other.
Yeah. I
Do you
can see
have
if I can
that?
Pull that up. Might take me a minute to get the
That's
Excel.
okay. So.
And
so
I-
those-
I know-
Those would be the key areas to be sure that we're anticipating the growth in those areas.
The other thing we've seen, once we get drafting the regulations, everyone gets assigned their flow that they have today. There is some room to move flow around. And that will come by way of regulation. Like I've looked at a number of different communities' regulations just to see what they're doing. And so there's a process for reallocating flow. If, everyone gets a certain amount, if you're not using yours, then it gets reallocated elsewhere.
Okay,
So that will come with the regulations that we are not even close to developing yet.
okay, because that was a discussion, for example, the property that's on, North Sunken Meadow, Sandy Meadow.
Sandy Meadow.
The little piece that we're talking about trying to do this to the left of the road.
Mhm.
And one of the local developers was talking about nitrogen credits and it's a way to do some kind of swap, so that.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
And
the
that-
short
that
answer
becomes-
is yes.
And that becomes very important.
Yes, I agree with you. And so the short answer is yes, but we're gonna have to draft that into our regulations going forward.
Okay. As I'm sure happens. Anyway. One of the things the zoning task force will be looking at next year. Is reducing the minimum lot size requirements. I know it's 40,000 square feet for a dwelling unit to 20,000 potentially. We used to be a town of little lots and then we changed the zoning, said, no, you have to all have big lots, and now because we need more land, we want to go back to the smaller lots.
So I
So
think,
what I'm just trying
Yeah.
to say is that be sure that you and Paul and the zoning task force and your work align together.
yes, Paul and I meet pretty regularly and chit chat, as we pass by. I think, remember that this plan only applies to those green areas, right? So everyone else not in here, it is in gray, depending on what color scheme you like.
Right.
All of these other areas in town are currently bound by the 10,000 square feet per bedroom.
Right,
So so we will have different schemes for the different areas and different regulations that apply.
Right.
We
Yeah.
have 5,000 gallons per day for tea time.
5,000 gallons per day.
5,000 gallons. per day.
And kind of what Hillary mentioned, we assign values based on current water usage and then Title V estimates. And then obviously if somebody wasn't on the water system, we could match it between like single family houses that were on the water system. And then after we kind of had a value assigned to each property, we did put blanket like contingencies on each. I want to say it averaged out to around like 15% over
Contingency.
kind of what we were
What-
using to
And we do
allow
have
for
some-
development.
We have Ella who has her hand raised.
Can we just circle back to the
Yes.
5,000 gallons per day gets you 45 bedrooms? Flat straight with no trading, right?
Ooh,
Plus the
That's-
15% contingency, which we don't.
That's way too small.
We'll have to
Yeah,
follow up. Have a
yeah, let's
discussion.
follow up, but
Yeah,
that's way
that's
too
fine.
small. What about Holmes Road?
Which, the McGregor piece, is that what we're talking about?
No,
Yes,
Holmes Road off a bracket or off a Nauset?
off of Bracket down but the McGregor piece at the end of it.
Can you pull that one, Jackie? I don't know if we.
Yeah. Trying to think. Oh, I checked the address. I can search it that way.
It's 20 minutes.
because they calculated under Title V,
Mm-hmm,
because it's 11 acres.
mm-hmm,
So that's what that's calculated.
mm-hmm.
But I was under the impression from Jackie that you were calculating it based on the anticipation of what.
And I think when these numbers went in, they went in per Title V. And then we know that we can move flow around once we have the regulations in place. So the smallest development you'll get would be 45.
But there's the potential.
There's
for
the
more.
potential for more.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Is that 45 bedrooms, assuming that property turns into all housing?
Mhm,
Because if there were commercial
mhm.
use of that property too, then that would take away
Then
some
that
of
would
that.
take away
flow.
some of that.
And you'd be left
Right.
with fewer bedrooms.
Mhm.
Right,
Right. But 45 bedrooms equates to about 20 units,
depending on the mix.
depending on the mix of the size of the units, so
Mhm.
that's significantly lower than I think we were anticipating.
So we can go back and work with that and find flow and shift it.
Yeah. And the. at the end of-
220. Oh, sorry. I was looking 220 bracket. It looks like we allocated 100 gallons per day.
Because of the industrial use, maybe?
Right.
100,000? No.
No,
How big is the lot, Jackie? I think it was based.
Yeah.
Back there?
yeah, it's quite large,
20.68 acres.
okay?
So that
and
should be,
So,
100 units, you're saying,
No,
no?
Yeah, it looks like we had this spreadsheet 100.
Yeah. That should
Gallons
be
per day.
20 some acres.
But she's saying
100 gallons per day is
Which is
like
almost a
nothing.
bedroom,
No.
right?
I thought you were saying 100 units, which is.
No,
No, I think she's saying 100 gallons per
100
day, right?
gallons.
that's.
Yep.
That's a big disconnect,
Yeah.
really big,
Yeah, that's very low. I think that's based on the industrial use, not residential.
right?
Is that because it's zoned industrial?
Industrial. Yep.
It's its own trade park,
Trade park?
which,
But I think the flow, I'm sorry, the disconnect is the Title V terminology of what that is, so the flow.
right,
But even so, that does seem low because of the 20 acres, even if you had industrial on 20 acres, it should be higher than that.
Right. I wonder if we connected it to, just looking at the map. Maybe I
Because
have
that-
it under 195 or 175.
under the new zoning. That area is primed for residential.
Right.
It actually touches Route 6, and I wonder if that's the address.
Well, we can certainly go back, if you can send us all the possible addresses it might be.
Yeah.
Then we can go back and,
This should be
Yeah,
one
I'll
piece of-
talk to Paul about that.
okay,
Yeah.
It's just one piece of property.
okay.
Yeah.
So we'll circle back to that.
And so if we do find that there's a disconnect, what does that mean?
If we do find that there's a disconnect, we do have wiggle room because we have this 15% contingency. So we have some excess to work with and move around, and we know that not everyone is gonna use their maximum allotment. We also have water usage and water data. We're gonna be able to crunch to see exactly what the flows are from certain properties. So we have some tools in our toolbox to get at that. So we have the McGregor property. Neither do I, and the tea time. What else? Or is that all of them?
Town center.
Well, the whole town center area.
Town Center Plaza.
With, with the new zoning that would include housing as well as commercial.
And what is your time horizon?
Well, the zoning has been changed.
I know that.
Right, and so now it's up to the economy, so to speak, for the business owners, property owners to start to make either development or rehab consistent with the new zoning. The parts of it, Town Center Plaza that the town owns
Mhm.
will be up to the town to work with those private owners to do that. So we don't have a particular time horizon.
Okay.
It's not the town that's gonna go build this.
I'm just thinking about
Tea
the,
time is slightly different because the town will be doing an RFP for tea time
Mhm.
to find a partner to work with on some or all of it, depending on the different parts of uses of the tea time property. And
Is there a
my-
time frame for that?
in our discussions, the idea would be that tea time RFP, once the wastewater plan is approved by the town, that the RFP could start to be developed and.
Okay, so
sent out.
soon after.
So soon after. Yes,
And then the funding
and that
for
RFP would need to address the.
number of
wastewater
bedrooms, yeah.
issue.
And then the funding for that comes from private developers, right?
And the state and.
Federal or state local
Mhm.
funds.
Right, it's a whole mix of probably 10 or 15 different types of funding for the development.
Does it go back before town meeting ever, before, like to discuss the development?
I think there would be public comment periods and certainly it would go before the select board. It would not be required to go to town meeting unless there was additional financial impact
Yeah.
on the town.
Mm.
But that depends on the public-private partnership.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Mhm. So it would be sooner, the ideal is sooner rather than later.
We do have Ella with her hand up if we can. Ella, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, hi folks. Thank you for acknowledging me. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a community organizer with CDP. I work with a group of East Ham advocates, and I'm meeting with them later today to talk about why we want to support this effort. And I'm trying to condense my talking points, like this wonderful 15-minute discussion, this little segue we just had about zoning. I want to run my understanding by you all to make sure I have it correct. So zoning continues to manage growth by limiting what is built where. The zoning isn't changing. So sewering doesn't allow for just willy-nilly development. Simultaneously, at annual town meeting, voters did approve new zoning for the East Ham Town Center, which allows for business growth, which allows for the creation of affordable housing. And that dream we all voted on can't be realized without this wastewater. Similarly, nothing moves forward on Tea Time Plaza until we know what wastewater looks like. So this doesn't affect growth and density throughout town generally, except for what we've already agreed on. These things are kind of lockstep with each other, correct?
Correct.
And further, those changes to zoning that you mentioned were in a very specific, targeted
Yes.
and relatively small area of town.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, thank you. I feel between this does allow for affordable housing in a controlled manner, but also we have to do this because otherwise it's a violation of the Clean Water Act. I feel like I've got some good, I feel like I've got some solid
Yeah.
reasons why we should say yes to this.
And if you want to talk about more talking points, Ella,
Yeah.
yeah, feel free to give me a call or
Cool.
Rachel, one or the
Okay.
other of us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. My takeaway is from this, besides the detailed stuff, which is great to hear again and again and again, which is good because then it sinks in.
Right.
You're the expert. Is that there might be some disconnects in terms of the planning about the capacity on a couple of the large pieces in that core area.
Mhm, mhm.
And you and Paul maybe can talk about that and try and resolve that.
We did have conversation, Jackie, we did have conversation with GHD and Paul. We did have a couple meetings about it. So I think it comes down to really the regulation and the growth neutral bylaw and how we draft those two pieces.
Right. And it has the growth neutral part of the bylaw been drafted?
No, we have a couple of models we're looking at. We need to figure out where we want to situate it. In the Board of Health regulations, in the general bylaws, so we
Okay.
have to figure.
It
the
has to go to
specific-
town meeting.
Depends on where we put it.
If it's in health, no.
If it's in health, no.
Okay, because the warrant for the town meeting's already been published.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no,
This is
it's
an
not, yeah, no, it's not going in there.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
No.
But as a concept, is it something that would be talked about at the town meeting?
Well, the growth neutral in general.
I
is
think
part of the
we are-
presentation, So
We are planning to give
a little more.
a brief presentation. I don't even know if that's
Yes.
possible anymore, but yes, we are planning to give a little brief presentation. And we will talk about the growth neutral bylaw piece, because I think there is a misconception that sewers equal big growth. And way back when, maybe like 25 years ago, when we started talking about sewers, it almost seemed like it brought a lot of potential. But that's not the case anymore, because we're building to mitigate, we're not building to grow.
Like that.
I mean,
I think-
that's,
Ella, did you hear that? That tagline that she just said is one of your talking points. That we're building to mitigate,
Not to grow. Yeah.
not to create excessive growth.
Thank you.
Right, that's important. I wouldn't say not grow.
well, to grow sustainably and responsibly, I think that's the
Yeah.
line in the presentation, but I didn't,
Yeah,
give you
no,
the.
but that-
blow
that's-
for blow.
It's
Yeah.
important. And
Yes.
It's for this group.
And I did, I can find sustainable growth allowing for some sustainable growth and future development.
Right.
Is the terminology
Okay,
I've
all right.
used in previous.
Okay. I know we're all sort of a little bit pressed for time. More questions?
No, nothing
Comments?
specific. I mean, I'm just thinking about this,
Right.
the poo signs all over town. Right, I mean, ultimately, the truth is today our lack of wastewater treatment is a check on growth. Of course, we have these other checks on growth, so it's very easy if you're against the wastewater system to
Right.
say, oh, we're getting rid of this check on growth and, big development everywhere.
Right.
And I think, it's as usual, it's the subtler message that we have to put out, which is that yes, we're talking about removing certain checks on growth, but all of these others exist and allow us to achieve the things that we need and want to achieve.
Right.
That
Because
it's
we
been
can't do
well thought
that
out.
without the wastewater,
Yeah.
but we can still control things, right?
Yeah,
There's still a zoning board, there's still a zoning law, there's still a planning board, there's still planning laws,
I think that the signs are almost entirely in the neighborhood surrounding the transfer station. I've seen 2 signs.
I'm sure they're most popular,
On
I've
the
definitely
road.
seen them, I
Yeah.
mean, I've seen them at the Rotary, yeah,
I've
but.
seen 2 at the Rotary. But most are,
Spattering around, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, and I mean, it's understandable, to
Yeah.
think, do I want a wastewater treatment plant built in my backyard? It's very easy to see how someone's initial reaction to
Yeah.
that is, no, I don't want that. And then it's all the work that you guys are doing of saying, look, we're really thinking this through. This is the place for it.
Right.
We're building this in a way to not interrupt your life and property value and all that, and also.
Well,
come
we
out
were
and-
talking to the guy in Orleans about, their facility, and he said, well, people need to understand that if we do nothing and our, surface water bodies degrade, but talk about losing property value.
I mean, I was
That's
having that
something
thought a
that
half an hour ago, that like,
Yeah.
honestly, if you really think about it, big
Right.
picture,
Right?
there's all this gross stuff to think about, all this sewage and yucky, and we're gonna go put it all in one place and try to treat it, like, ew, gross, I don't want that. But instead, what we're doing is, let's just put it all under all the ground that we all live in all the time.
Where we get our
And you
water.
go, oh, wait a minute, maybe that's gross.
Yeah.
And where we wanna
Yeah.
go, and we're
Point.
going to go harvest oysters and mussels.
Right.
Right,
No,
so,
yeah, okay, all right.
get up at town meeting and say that.
You better.
Do you wanna make a video? I hear Kayla's going out.
Yeah, go make it once. Go make it.
I didn't have a script.
Oh.
Bring him to the video.
Bring him to the video.
We'll find an available spot.
If
Hey, listen, Jared Bale.
it's useful, you can put me on a camera, but just let me know.
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
I will
I
do
mean,
that.
your usual suspects,
Right,
no offense.
no,
Right.
that's what I mean, like a town meeting, it's really good for people
Yeah.
to
I know, I won't,
speak out that aren't, you won't be there?
I'm out of town.
Don't worry, I will, if I get riled up at town meeting, I will get on that microphone and
Good.
Good.
don't worry.
Okay.
Nice night, twitching last meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
other questions, comments? Elaine, you okay? Okay,
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.
He's sorry.
Yeah,
big follow-up to do between you and Paul.
yeah. It's not big, it's part of the,
Yeah, part of the planning. Yeah, okay, thank you.
And are you here today? I'll catch up with you too.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm going to do my video and
Great.
I have to look at a basking shark again and.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Are we, is that it?
No. I think
One-
we have
the one on the beach?
One very quick
Sorry.
item.
Does that become your problem somehow?
Yep.
I just see it on Facebook. Why isn't somebody doing something about this? I mean, the coyotes will.
Or we will. Comment about the whale at Hemingway years ago. Whoa, was that thing right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so we do
Item
one.
6 on the agenda.
Yep.
Changing the contract date for the rental assistance and housing emergency loan program to June 30th of 2026. So extending the contract for,
For help and wrap, it's it's just a few months.
yes.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
like March,
so we
one's
have them-
March, one's April, so we,
So
Get
we
them all
get it on a
together.
fiscal year.
yeah, correct.
Right, so if someone would like to make a motion to extend the current contract for the rental assistance and housing emergency loan program to June 30th, 2026.
I think I just heard you say that we're just doing this to align to a fiscal year and make things even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The contract ended roughly
March
March.
of
something.
2026 in April or
Yeah.
something like,
And
yeah.
it's just much easier to get it on a fiscal.
Yeah, I'm totally, well, I just heard Amy move for that, so I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Elaine, yes, I think passes 4-0. Okay. Thank you. We will execute a contract amendment with the HPC
Yes, and
and
Hatch.
Hatch. Right, okay. Anything else that we need to talk about today?
No,
Good discussion. Next meeting is scheduled to be July 10th. I'll check with Rachel to see if there's anything that comes up that we might need to have a meeting.
Right.
I personally will be traveling that day,
okay,
so it would be difficult, and sometimes we take the summer months off.
yeah,
So if there's not anything that requires immediate attention, I'm suggesting not having the meeting.
I think we
next month.
covered a lot today, so
Right,
vote wise.
See.
so unless Rachel, you find that there's something that needs our attention
Sure,
immediately,
yeah,
okay. So no, next scheduled meeting would be in August.
yeah, we have Windmill Weekend in September, but we pretty much have that down. So I don't know that there's a lot to discuss about that.
Okay, so
So,
the next
but we-
meeting would be August 14th. Okay. Anything else for the good of the group?
My goodness, I'll have no children in summer camp that week.
Woo-hoo.
I would give anything to sit here for an hour with you people.
Motion to adjourn, so done. 10:06.
Seconded.
I.
Aye.
I.